Alright, hey everyone, welcome to RetroContext. This is Mecha. I thought I'd try putting a little more effort into my video this time, primarily by using my voice, but also some editing and some actual footage beyond just the comparison. So yeah, I don't know, I'll keep trying it. Hopefully I'll continue doing that in the future. Anyway, if you've seen my last video, or if you haven't, it's a comparison of two emulators, playing an N64 game. After publishing it, I realized I had some issues with the video, and it could probably use some extra depth. For one, it doesn't have a true comparison to the original N64 version, so I thought I'd remedy that today. Last time there were some issues with resolution and timings that introduced a few more variables than I would have liked. So I wanted to try again today. I wouldn't say everything is perfect here, there are definitely areas that more time and effort could fix, but what I have today is another emulation comparison with an original N64 comparison to go along with it. As before, I'll be looking at each with a critical eye, identifying some differences, and then maybe you can choose whether it's right for you, whether it's worth it to adopt one of the emulators in question, or just pick up the original game on N64. And hey, play it on a CRT or scale it, it's no good on a modern TV. I chose the game Pokémon Snap today, not only because it's historically been kind of hard to emulate properly, but also because I really love this game. I adore it. Pretty much everything about it. I love the chunky graphics that give everything a really quaint character. The music is just so essential in theming out each stage. The first level is so breezy and island-like, and the second level is really mysterious, and all the way down to the last level, which I guess I shouldn't give away because it's technically spoilers. But the music is really spacey and ethereal, so take from that what you will. And I just really love that it's a blend of an on-rails shooter and a puzzle game. It really is just a great combination of gameplay, and it never gets boring for me. So that's why I love it. The sequel is also really great if you've played it on Switch. And there are some lovely games out there that are also inspired by it, including 2021's, I believe it was 2021, Toem. Great game. I loved it. Very cute. But nothing really compares to the original, and that's why I'm using it here today. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what the setups for each console look like here. First off, we've got the footage you've been watching from the Nintendo Switch Online version. This one's really simple. There's not a lot to know about it. The console is locked at 1080p, and it's been cropped to 4:3 by the NSO app. So it displays in a 4:3 window. Take note of that aspect ratio because it's going to matter later. Then we've got the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console version. This one's a little more complicated. It's recorded on a console that typically outputs in 480p, so I've scaled that up to 1080p using Mike Shee's awesome RetroTink 5X Pro. Amazing scaler, shout out to him. There are about a billion different settings and things to mess with using a scaler, of course, but I've tried to imitate the Switch version as best as I could without changing any colors or adding any post-processing. Especially scan lines. They do not do well on YouTube videos. If you're gonna capture scan lines, you're probably better off just recording a CRT using a camera. But that's a video for another day. The only change I made was forcing the console and then the scaler to output in generic 4:3, so that everything is the same size. And then we've got the N64 original version. So this is an original NTSC console outputting video over S-video. The reason I chose this instead of composite, aside from the obvious visual benefit, is that it's really the best video output you can get without modifying your console in some way. As some of you might know, the N64 does actually have the ability to output in RGB, with a few tweaks to the main board, of course. Also of note is that the N64 has this sort of blur filter enabled that sort of softens the entire image. Now, this is something that people don't like, and I also don't like, but again, it's there on a console you'd buy off the shelf, and it can't be removed without modification, so I've just left it on. The N64 is outputting at 240p and being upscaled to 1080p, again with no post-processing or resizing through interpolation. It's also been resized to 4:3, but not quite the 4:3 that you're used to. We'll get back to that when we view the footage. Oh, right. There is technically one more emulator. Okay, so what you're seeing right now is the game running on Wii 64. If you're not familiar with it, it's a port of the popular emulator Mupen 64 for the Wii. And Mupen 64 is awesome. I've used it for years to emulate the N64 games on my PC. So it pains me to say that trying to run this game on the Wii 64 was absolutely just, well, just watch. So then I did this, and never touched it again. Yeah, so I don't really know what was going on there, and I'm sure someone more knowledgeable on emulation than I am can figure it out, but I didn't really have the patience to diagnose it for this video. Anyway, to spare myself and you any additional auditory torture, let's just say there won't be a Wii 64 comparison in this video. Cool? Cool. On to the comparisons then. So first up, let's tackle the game intro. I found that if there are going to be major differences between the different versions of this game, we'd probably find them here first. So let's dive right in. So, what'd you think? I know that at this point you've probably made up your mind about which comparison is more interesting at least. The Wii VC version doesn't have many standout differences from the Switch version, beyond image brightness, and the Switch is by far the more popular console right now, so it makes for a better comparison to the original N64 version. So, what are the differences anyway? The biggest one, and this is something I mentioned in the captions, is that blur filter that the N64 employs. That seems to be the biggest culprit by far, so let's talk about that. What is this blur filter and why does it exist? In short, it's the N64's way of anti-aliasing its games. In that early 3D era, Nintendo seemed to have had an interest in avoiding a chunky, blocky look to their games, something Sony notably did not have an issue with. While this is harder to notice on a CRT television, where the scan lines obscure the smear effect, on modern TVs, scaled up or not, this becomes much more obvious. In recent years, software modders have found that an old N64 Game Shark can be used to interfere with the N64 temporarily writing the blur into the software code. Hardware solutions exist too, like the Ultra HDMI, which in addition to enabling HDMI out, can unscramble the blurred image, so to speak. There are also RGB enabling hardware modifications, which sometimes come with an option to prevent the N64 from writing the blur filter to software in the first place. Again, this is all very technical and doesn't represent the average player's gameplay experience, so I didn't think to include a deep dive comparison between deblur methods in this video. But I think it would be fun to try out and maybe record a one-off comparing the game with and without the Game Shark software mods. We'll see. Anyway, on to the next comparison. So this time I've chosen a gameplay selection from the first few stages. I don't aim or use any items to keep the tests as similar as possible. Alright, let's dive in. Alright, that's it for the comparisons. Not a whole lot of new observations this time, huh? We're really seeing the same pattern here. The N64 has a blurry, lower frame rate look due to the image processing and less powerful hardware. The Wii VC version and the Switch version are nearly identical, save for image brightness. So instead of obsessing over the minutia, let's talk a little bit about the big ideas here. First, emulation. It's a perfectly valid way to play older games. It offers the benefit of accessibility, custom resolutions, and in the case of the N64, it even strips the image of unneeded processing. Ever since Nintendo updated the NSO app to fix common emulation errors, it's become my preferred way to play older games, especially N64. But there are hundreds of other emulation solutions, on and off the market, if you don't have a home console, or if you prefer higher resolutions, or fine-tuning the image in other ways. Next up, original hardware. As someone who has never gotten rid of a console, and uses his original N64 from the 90s, I fully understand how gratifying it can be to play games how you remember them. Ultimately though, there are two real benefits to playing this way. Nostalgia, which needs no explanation, and optimization, which really is just the pursuit of a great image. Personally, I'm in it for both. I love the idea of pushing older hardware, especially the analog variety, to its limits, to get something that reaches emulation-level image quality. And wouldn't that be the best compliment you could give a 27-year-old device? And lastly, Pokémon Snap. If you've made it this far in the video, you've probably seen a lot of footage of this game. Maybe you're a little sick of it. Really, I think it's one of the N64's best games. Arcadey, full of color, diversity, and character, and with tons of replayability. Yes. It says a lot about this game, and maybe about my brain, that even after hours upon hours of editing this footage, part of me wants to go back and try for a high score. Anyway, this has been it for RetroContext. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.